the people. Dialogue Breaks on Radio Jeem.
At exactly 2 p.m. Central African time on this beautiful day is the Mandela International Day. We know 67 minutes of pure dedication. What were you doing since this morning in commemorating this Mandela Day in 2023? The name is Elfas Nkosi. Great to be with you on this Mandela Day. Really appreciate your time. But of course, it's a great pleasure to be with you on this show right here on Radio Jeem. This is the Dialogue Breaks. What are we really discussing today? It's an issue that, on what was considered the holiest and most sacred day for Muslims. The nation laid to rest Imam Ahmad Qasim, a tireless fighter for justice, not just in South Africa, but worldwide. Born on December the 12th, 1945, Qasim died during the early hours of Friday at the age of 77. His daughter, Wahida, saying that her father passed on at around 2:55 a.m. at his home in Hook Street in Lansdowne. Qasim had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in January. Now, to help us unpack the story and celebrating really the life of Imam Qasim, I'm joined on the line by Mr. Pandarani Nafolobodwe. He's a South African politician and former, or no, we don't have to say former, but he's still anti-apartheid activist who served as deputy president of the Azanian People's Organization from 1992 to 2010. Sir, good afternoon. Welcome to the program on a beautiful day like this on Nelson Mandela celebrating another icon, but we're going to talk about another icon indeed. Thank you so much for making time to come and join us here.
Thank you very much for allowing me to be part of your program. It's the first time that I appear on this program.
Yes.
And hope that the listeners will be able to enjoy the program.
Definitely.
One thing which is very clear up front is that we normally in South Africa regard freedom fighters and liberation struggle stalwarts, and those that fought for freedom and democracy as anti-apartheid activists or struggle fellows.
Yes.
I would prefer to refer to them as freedom fighters and liberation struggle fighters, because apartheid is just but one of the elements of what they were fighting against.
Definitely. That's true. That's true. Thank you so much for that, for that clarity. As I always say that, you never quit learning. We learn every day, and it gives us great pleasure and appreciation that, at least today we've learned one or two things. Now, back to the life of Imam Ahmad. When do you meet Imam Ahmad, and what really comes to mind when you think of him?
Now, I didn't really meet him very much, but I met him, say, twice or thrice in his whole life.
Yeah.
Because by the time I went to Robben Island, where he was incarcerated, he was on the way out.
Okay.
So, in other words, we never really met on Robben Island. He stayed there, I also stayed there, but at different times.
Yeah.
But as you know, I have been a member of AZAPO for many years.
Yes.
I was during my time when I was president of AZAPO.
Yes.
We used to commemorate certain events of the struggle.
Yes.
With people who belong to what was termed Qibla, an organization that the Imam formed. So that is when I interacted with the members of that organization, particularly in Cape Town.
Yes.
And in Guguletu in particular, where we used to have commemoration services. And that is when I came to know this fighter of our time.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, obviously, when you talk about people like you and him, everything starts at Robben Island. But how would you tell our listeners what kind of a person was Imam?
Now, for your listeners, they may not know that he was arrested at a very young age. And he was then sentenced to Robben Island.
Yes.
But when he was released, he was then subjected to what you call house arrest, the banning orders of that time. And as a result of those banning orders, from time to time, he used to actually go against those banning orders. And then the security police would, from time to time, come for him. Now, this is a fellow who was involved in many, many organizations. I will just mention a few to the listeners. Now, as you know, Imam Qasim, in the Muslim tradition,
yes,
to be an imam is also a very high status.
Yes.
In the Muslim religion.
Yes.
So in the first place, as we are saying imam, we are actually indicating a status and influence in the Muslim fraternity. He was also a member of the Pan-Africanist Congress.
I see.
One of the liberation movements that fought very gallantly against capitalism and the forces of imperialism. So you can see from that which I'm mentioning that he was a man who felt that this country must change drastically. And as you know, to be a member of the Pan-Africanist Congress, it means, amongst others, to be a person who wants the land of black people to be returned, as the Pan-Africanists always say, to the rightful owners.
Yes.
The indigenous people of our land, starting with the first people who occupied Southern Africa, the Khoisans. Now, yes. he was this kind of person who believed very strongly in that tradition. That's why he joined the Pan-Africanist Congress. He was also a member of the Islamic Unity Convention, an organization he participated in all the time. And as you can see, the concept unity.
Yes.
He was a man who wanted the Muslim fraternity to remain united, so that the struggle can be completed. He was also an advisor to the Islamic Human Rights Commission. Many people don't regard those who belong to the Muslim religion as people who also uphold human rights. So I'm mentioning this very, very carefully because I want people to understand that human rights are not something that is only for the capitalist world. Human rights are human rights, and Qasim was one of those who went around making sure that the Islamic fraternity has a commission on human rights. And as you can see from what I'm saying, is that he was right through his life a man who wanted the freedom of black people in this country to finally reach a stage where the dignity of the oppressed is upheld. So that is just for your listener, so that they can know this person we are talking about.
Yes, absolutely. And this brings me to the question of, together in Robben Island at the time, how were the conditions there? Were you faced with harshest conditions at the time, whereby Imam Ahmad and together with yourselves that they wanted to expose those particular conditions there?
But as I said, that I went there when Imam had been released.
Oh,
but
yes.
the conditions there were those of all the prisons that you found in South Africa that time. And the conditions were such that you would not be left by the warders alone. Even when you are on Robben Island, where we know you are surrounded by the sea, they would still be looking after you. When you get out of your cell, they will be there to guard you, even when they know that to swim from Robben Island to the mainland will take a long time. It's like that they would still find you there. Now, so there was a question of us having to go and work at the quarry.
Oh, yes.
And as things stand, we then refused. We went there for 1 or 2 days, but we then decided that it is going to stop. And we stopped it by just simply refusing to work at the quarry. And ever since that date, all prisoners who came after us were not taken to the quarry. And so we stopped that hard labor that were that many prisoners were subjected to.
Then as we take a look, just I would say that perhaps maybe taking stock of the life that he lived, what legacy do you think he has left us in this country?
Dave, he has left a very important legacy for those who care to follow his commitment.
Yeah.
The legacy that he left was that he was committed to the principles, and he upheld the dictum of dying for freedom. That's one legacy he has left.
Yeah.
He was a person who was in the forefront of fighting oppression every day. And he had committed himself to die for it. Second, he was one of those who was non-sectarian. If you were to remember, in the olden days of our struggle, there was a tendency of regarding the struggle as belonging to certain political parties, and that any other person who is in the struggle should therefore not be recognized. It was also part and parcel of what is called the AU. Those days, the AU in our country only recognized the African National Congress as the legitimate party to fight against oppression. So he was, together with some of us, vehemently opposed to the struggle being associated with only one political party or one liberation movement. So in that sense, it's a legacy of non-sectarianism. He also left a legacy of being able to work with people who did not actually come from his religious background. He was a Muslim but he could work with any person, provided that person was interested in freeing the country and freeing black people. So that is a very important legacy he has left. But if you were to talk to those who are in the Muslim fraternity, he left a larger legacy, in the sense that, as you know, he was one of those who were very, very opposed to the continued suppression and oppression of the Palestinian people. And he was one of those who was in the forefront of always burning the torch for free Palestine. So that is really the man we are talking about here.
It gives me a sense that we're talking about someone who had leadership qualities, someone who's been a good leader. Now, when you look at lives and our leaders this day, well, there's so many complaints from the public about the leadership that we have as a country, from the ruling party, in different spheres of government. People seems to be despondent with regards to leadership. In terms of how you've put his legacy, you spoke about this legacy. How far are we from us as South African recognizing or realizing, leadership of Imam Ahmad's caliber? Should we expect this type of leadership from the leaders that we have today? How would you maybe perhaps surmise this whole situation that we're faced with?
Of course, in South Africa, we are now in trouble, absolutely trouble. We no longer have leaders. We now have leaders, well, the so-called leaders, really, if I were to put it that way, who are interested only on winning the next election.
Oh, yeah.
I want to repeat.
Yes.
I want to repeat. Yeah. We are now having people who are called leaders, but who are only interested in winning the next election. There is a difference between being interested in winning the next election and interested in the affairs of the people. Interested in making sure the standard of life of our people are made better. Interested in making sure that this country can say it has freed the soul and of black people. If you look around, everything that is done now,
yes,
it's for purposes of winning the next election. And when you concentrate on that, sometimes they don't even worry about service delivery, for that matter, because they know that in order to win the next election, towards the election, you come with food parcels to the poor, and then you tell them to vote for you. So that's really not it's not the caliber of Imam Qasim. Qasim had nothing. If you can go now to his home and check, he had nothing. He was not a premier, he was not anything, but he was still interested in the affairs of his people and making sure that
And indeed, speaking of such,
in our country.
Speaking of such, considering the fact that we're celebrating Mandela Day today, and obviously one would look at the significance of these days and how has the political landscape, ruined or changed the significance of this day. What would you say the Mandela Day today, does it still serve the purpose based on, what you just explained today in terms of the crisis that we face from our leadership?
Well, I've never really been a fan of Mandela's Day. Safe to say it is a day where we celebrate the fact that there was a Mandela. But it has got no content. It's today, you must check, it has got no content of freedom. It has got content of having had someone who brought us what we call rainbow nation, which is it no longer exists, that rainbow. It no longer exists at all, because that rainbow was a fallacy. It was something that we were trying to build out of people who are in poverty. You can have a rainbow of people who, some of them are very, very rich, and some of them own the whole country's economy, and some of them own all the land that we live around with. And then you say you are building a rainbow nation with people who are in poverty, people who have got nothing, who are still struggling every day. So it is a day, well, because government has made it a day to be celebrated, that's fine. But out of anything, there is nothing that represents freedom in the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear you. Before we let you go, sir, anything that you'd like to leave us in remembrance of Imam?
All what I want to say is that those who are like me and others, let's commit ourselves to actually reach final victory. We must commit ourselves. It will take a long time, and I'm leaving you with this to say it will take a long time, but final victory will come, because the acts of nature are thus such that as children God get born and they continue to live in material circumstances that we all see today, where they go to school, we give them money in order to complete their degrees, and when the degrees are over, the children stay at home and they have no work, because the country has not moved in order to accommodate our children. The country is now in debt. The country is now in trouble insofar as it relates to the future of our children and those who will live longer, even when some of us are no longer there. So that's what I can leave you with.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated indeed. We'll keep in touch and take care.
Thank you very much.
It's a very big thank you there to our guest. It's Mr. Pandelani Nefelobodwe. He's a South African politician, anti-apartheid activist who served as deputy president of the Azanian People's Organization from 1992 to 2010. He also represented the party in the National Assembly from 2002 to 2009 and was formerly its president from 1990 to 1992. This is indeed the Dialogue Breaks right here on Radio Jeem. The name is Elfas Nkosi. And of course, we're celebrating the life of the struggle stalwart, that is the life of Imam Ahmad Kasim, where we're celebrating his life today right here on Radio Jeem. All right, as we move right along, and of course, we take just a quick break. We'll come back, and I see that we do have another guest on the line who's joining us to come and unpack the life of Imam Ahmad Kasim. Let's just I'm going to play just a jingle of the show, and then we'll be back. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. All right, great pleasure indeed, of course, as we welcome you on this program on the Dialogue Breaks right here on Radio Jeem. My name is Elfas Nkosi. It's a great pleasure to be with you this afternoon on this Mandela Day. Have you served your 67 minutes of Mandela Day today? Let us know on, of course, on our Facebooks. On Facebook we are Of course, it's a Radio Jeem on Facebook and on Twitter, radio_Jeem. You can join the conversation right there. All right, let's now welcome our guest on the line. I see it's written, but I'm not sure if the name is right. But yeah, great to have you this afternoon on our show. Thank you so much. Welcome to the program. Okay, I see your microphone hasn't connected as yet. I'm not sure. I see your microphone is still trying to connect, because if you are going to try and speak, you won't be audible because of I don't see your microphone. They can just perhaps maybe check the connectivity of your microphone, and then we are good to go after that. Of course, as we celebrate to talk about the life of Imam Qasim Ahmad. And of course, if you want to know, Qasim's fight against apartheid began when he was just 15 years old and joined the armed struggle. Now, at the age of 17, he, along with his teacher, that is Sadiq Isaacs, were arrested and charged under the Sabotage Act. While in prison, Imam Qasim sentenced to hard labor and attempted to expose the harsh conditions prisoners faced by smuggling letters to Amnesty International and the International Red Cross, an action which would result in corporal punishment right there. Of course, we are going to really have a lot about his life. Thank you so much. Welcome to the program, sir. Really appreciate your time. Good afternoon, sir. Yeah, you can speak. We are ready to you. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the Dialogue Breaks. The name is Elfas Ngos. Thank you so much for your time.
May I speak?
Yes, thank you so much. Welcome to the program.
Okay, thanks, Comrade.
It's a great pleasure indeed. We are celebrating the life of Imam Ahmad Qasim. How do you know Imam Ahmad? What do you remember about him the most?
Look, Imam Ahmad and myself been very close since 1980.
Yes.
We became very close. I met him in 1977, where his first banning order lapsed. And at this, there was a student Islamic week where he actually did the presentation, did 5 definitive characteristics of a revolution. And we were astounded by what he said the evening there. Subsequent to that, we were young men at that time, and we made contact with him, and we started working with him on various other programs. He was a free man, and he was teaching at that time at various schools, and he became very popular amongst the students to such an extent that the second banning order was placed on him. In 1918, he was detained in 1980, and he was detained for almost a year, with all the other students at that time at Victor Stair, now Drakensberg prison. And he had a major impact on all the guys in prison. Yeah. You can even speak to some of his lawyers that time. The late Dalla Umar actually made his whole team available to represent the detainees.
Yeah.
So Siraj Sai is still alive. He can tell you a lot about that. The retired judge now, he can tell you a lot about that.
Yeah.
In 1979, it came about that Ahmad and myself became very close. Comrade Ahmad and myself became very close.
Yeah.
And we then started discussing around the question, is there a need for an Islamic body to take up the question of liberation in the country? In 1979, we formed the Qibla movement, which had a specific Islamic content to address the struggle in our country, and from an Islamic perspective. He then recruited me, Ahmed, and we formed a cell that started operating. In that regard, we became quite active in all the type of emerging struggle avenues in the country.
Yeah.
Such as the 1980 school boycott, then the subsequent question of the food boycott in the country. It was actually done through the UDF. And then in that regard, when the police actually clamped down on the people here, we decided that, listen, it is now time that we also join the struggle outside and go into the question of training.
See.
He then requested myself to do the internal work, and there was another comrade of ours, Dawood Parker, who was actually then asked to do all the external work. We made contact with the Libyans, and Gaddafi actually sanctioned that our guys could go for training. So our people went for training in 1986, 1985, and 1986 to Libya for training. We then had to go through, because the only two organizations that were sanctioned by the OEU at that time for such activities was the ANC under MK and APLA. Now, Ahmad had a close relationship with Malambo at that time because they were together in prison in Robben Island in 1964. And he and Malambo had a very good relationship. So the PAC actually accommodated us to go for training in Libya and did all the other African protocol that was required. Our guys was then, that was the time that Libyans was attacked. Libya was attacked by the Americans, and a lot of the guys had to leave Libya, and our guys were arrested in Athens. And that actually revealed the question that we were busy with the armed struggle.
Yeah.
To the South African and security.
Yeah.
You can go to the records in 1986 where it was actually where PW made the announcement in Parliament.
Yes.
So subsequent to that, we were part of the APLA, and ourselves were doing certain operations here in the country. One of the APLA guys was actually arrested on coming into the country, and he had the names of myself and Ahmad on him to make contact with us. That actually resulted in our arrest in 1986.
I see. Now, coming to a personal touch, the way you speak about Imam Ahmad, you can tell that you've been very close and serving a good cause. But you personally, how did it make you feel when you've heard about his death?
Look, I'm devastated of losing him. But it is a reality. In actual fact, a month ago when we were sitting and we spoke about the things, and he was still quite strong at that time. I said to him, listen, it's sell by date. We're coming to the age. He's 78, 79. I'm now 71, going for 72. And we were discussing about the issues around in the country. And I said, how do we deal with our age? And we started making notes. And at the end, he said, there's no such a thing as sell by date. The struggle continues. We've got to set the platform where the other things can carry on. And I'm at that stage now. Because I was part of probably his second in command.
I see.
And if we had to discuss about the questions of the seriousness of the struggle, how do we go about it? We direct our brains around it and looking at the situation, who we could actually recruit and how we can go forward with it. You must remember, Qibla was not the typical democratic organization. Comrade Imam Ahmad was actually the commander. While he was the leader of the movement, he was the commander. We would go and actually scan around with people that we think would be capable, and had the ability, and had the type of heart to do things. Whether it was in the education field, and in that regard, would approach those people and see whether we can recruit them to do those tasks. We were more task-oriented than looking at getting people elected in a conventional sense. So that was how Qibla operated. But with his character and his seriousness, people moved quite strongly to the movement. And his humbleness and his sacrifice, even personal sacrifices. A lot of time, I mean, there's very little about how he has. Look, Ahmad, when he came out of prison in 1979, 1969, 1970, with a banning order, he couldn't work. He got married during that time, and then he was actually employed as and being trained as a draftsman, architectural draftsman. When he was banned after being a teacher, again, he was practically unemployed. He couldn't meet with people. And then he had private, his own, but they did certain plannings at that time in order to sustain his life. So conventionally, the type of income to sustain a home was something which he didn't have in his life. And when he came out of prison here now, he was under banning order again. He was the only person banned when we came out in 1991. He was restricted about partaking in any political things. Nobody talks about that. When all the Kodesa went on with the PSC,
so, you know what?
He couldn't
you know what I'd like us to do? Can I ask you humbly so that we do a part 2 that we shall communicate that, you know, our time is restricted up until now. We need to have these platforms that we're using restrict us, but the part 2 will do it on a more unrestricted platform whereby we can talk and talk. This is a good story to tell. I would like to just say thank you for taking time to come and speak to us today, but we shall communicate with you off air and then set up another date whereby we'll have a bit longer time just to hear the good story of Imam Ahmad.
No, thanks. No, thanks. I think there's a lot of things that people should know about you.
Exactly. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate. Folks, we are using Zoom platforms, and we got to be restricted in terms of the time and whatnot. However, we will have a part 2 of this story. It's a good story to tell. I'm very touched, and inspired at the same time. The name is Alpha Sikosi. You have a lovely and a blessed afternoon, and I see that load shedding is about to start as well in our area. But for myself, stay tuned to Radio Jeem, especially the dialogue.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commander.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Taking Parliament to the people. Dialogue breaks on Radio Jeem.